The discovery. It was a quiet day in the vastness of space. The galactic patrol ship, Zirin Voyager, drifted near the edge of a distant star system. The crew, a group of highly advanced aliens known as the Ziranians, scanned the area for any unusual activity. The captain, a stern and commanding figure named Orvik, leaned back in his chair, bored from yet another uneventful patrol. Suddenly, a loud beeping sound filled the control room. The ship's radar had picked up a large object floating in the darkness. "What is that?" Orvik asked, his deep voice cutting through the silence. His crew quickly moved to analyze the readings. "It's an ancient fleet, Captain," replied Vera, the ship's head navigator. Her 3 eyes blinked in disbelief. "Several ships. No, hundreds of them. Just sitting there. They seem old, very old." The crew gasped. Discovering a fleet this far out was rare. Even more surprising, the fleet appeared to be intact despite its age. "Send a probe," Orvik ordered, leaning forward with interest. "Let's see what we're dealing with." As the probe approached the fleet, the crew got their first glimpse of the mysterious ships. They were massive, with designs unlike anything the Ziranians had seen before. The ships were covered in a thick layer of space dust, their metal hulls tarnished by centuries of exposure. Some of them had strange markings etched into their sides, symbols that no one recognized. "This is laughable," said Tarek, one of the younger crew members. He smirked as he looked at the images on the screen. "These ships look ancient, like something from a primitive species. Who would build such ugly, outdated vessels?" The rest of the crew chuckled in agreement. To them, the fleet looked like a pile of junk. In their advanced eyes, the ships were crude and poorly designed. Perhaps it belonged to a species that barely understood space travel, added another crew member, laughing. But not everyone was amused. Corin, the ship's scientist, frowned as he analyzed the energy readings coming from the fleet. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered to himself. The ships were old, yes, but they were still active. Faint energy signals pulsed from within them, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. "Captain," Corin said hesitantly, "there's something strange about these ships. They shouldn't be functioning after all this time, but they are. I suggest we proceed with caution." Orvik waved him off. "Relax, Corin. They're just old relics. What harm could they possibly do? Send the drone inside one of the ships. Let's see what secrets they're hiding." The probe moved closer, its tiny lights scanning the surface of the nearest ship. Slowly, it entered through a gaping hole in the hull. Inside, the ship was dark and silent. Metal walls lined the corridors, rusted and worn by time. The air was thick with particles of dust floating like tiny stars. As the probe explored deeper, it sent back images to the Ziranian crew. They saw rows of ancient consoles with buttons and levers, completely alien to their advanced touchscreens. There were old seats and panels, all designed for a species long gone. What kind of backward species used such primitive technology? Tarek scoffed. But then, something caught the probe's attention. A faint blue light glowed from a plaque attached to one of the walls. The probe moved closer, its camera zooming in to read the inscription. The words were written in an unknown language, but the ship's translation software quickly decoded it. On the screen, the crew saw a simple message: "Created by humanity." The room went silent. Orvik's eyes narrowed. "Humanity? What is that?" Corin's brow furrowed in thought. "I've read about them," he said slowly. "They were a species from a small planet called Earth, far from here. But they vanished thousands of years ago. Barely any records of them remain." Tarek laughed again, breaking the tension. "So, these are human ships. That explains the outdated design. No wonder they disappeared. They were weak and primitive." Corin shook his head. "Don't be so quick to judge. There's something strange about this fleet. How has it lasted this long? Why is it still active?" Before anyone could answer, the probe picked up a sudden energy spike. Lights flickered on inside the ship. Panels began to hum with life. The dusty corridors glowed faintly as ancient systems powered up for the first time in centuries. "Captain," Vera exclaimed, her voice filled with alarm. "The fleet, it's waking up." The Xeranians watched in stunned silence as the once-dead fleet began to stir. Engines hummed, weapon systems blinked to life, and a low, ominous vibration filled the air. "What have we just uncovered?" Orvac whispered, his voice filled with unease. The Xeranians had mocked the ancient fleet, but deep down, a chilling question began to creep into their minds. Was this fleet truly dead, or was it waiting for something, or someone? The mockery. The ancient fleet loomed in the void, its eerie hum sending a chill through the Xeranian crew. But despite the strange energy and sudden activation, the mood aboard the Xyran Voyager was anything but serious. The crew couldn't stop ridiculing the ships. Tarak leaned back in his chair, his smirk growing wider. "This fleet is nothing but a fossil," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Humanity must have been a joke of a species. Look at those designs. Bulky, inefficient. Were they trying to fight or build space museums?" The rest of the crew burst into laughter, their voices echoing through the control room. Even Captain Orvac chuckled, though a part of him couldn't shake the unease he felt looking at the glowing symbols on the ships. Still, he wouldn't let his crew see his doubts. He had a reputation to uphold. "Tarak, you may be right," Orvac said with a smirk. "But we'll never know unless we dig deeper. Send another drone. Let's see if these so-called humans left anything worth studying." Corin, the scientist, frowned as he stood in a corner of the room. His sharp mind refused to ignore the energy spikes coming from the fleet. The readings were irregular, fluctuating in ways he couldn't explain. Something about it felt alive. He had heard stories of humanity before, whispers of a species that was small but fierce, capable of surprising feats despite their fragile bodies. But he stayed silent. Nobody here cared for ancient history. The second drone glided out of the Xyran Voyager and into the heart of the ancient fleet. This time, it entered a larger ship, one that seemed to be the centerpiece of the formation. The crew watched its progress on their screens, still grinning and muttering sarcastic remarks. Inside the flagship, the drone discovered a massive central chamber. In the middle of the room stood a towering structure, a glowing orb suspended within a lattice of strange metals. The energy readings spiked again, this time stronger and more erratic. "What is that?" Vera asked, her tone less amused and more curious. Tarak leaned forward, his grin fading slightly. "Looks like they were trying to build a power source. Primitive, sure, but maybe they weren't completely useless." Suddenly, the orb flickered, and the room was flooded with light. Strange holograms appeared, shimmering figures of human engineers working frantically. They spoke in an ancient language that the Xeranian translators struggled to decode. The crew watched, mesmerized, as the holograms replayed a moment in time from centuries ago. One figure, a human wearing a tattered uniform, pointed at the orb and shouted. The translator finally managed to piece together a fragment of his words: "For survival. For Earth. For our future." Orvac raised an eyebrow. "For survival. Sounds dramatic. Maybe they were fighting among themselves." Corin spoke up, unable to hold back any longer. "Captain, I think this fleet wasn't just built for war. It was built for desperation. Look at the designs. They're not primitive. They're efficient for their time. Humans must have faced something terrible to create all this." Orvac waved him off. "A good theory, Corin, but it doesn't explain why this fleet is still floating here, untouched. If humans were so smart, why did they vanish? They couldn't even survive." The mocking continued, with Tarak leading the charge. Maybe they ran out of ideas and decided to leave their junk floating in space as a monument to their failure. But then, something happened that silenced every voice in the room. The holograms flickered again, this time displaying a large map of the galaxy. On it, several points glowed red, locations of ancient battles, remnants of a long-forgotten war. The map zoomed in on one point, Earth. A chilling message appeared, written in glowing letters. Humanity's final stand. The words sent a ripple of unease through the crew. Tarek tried to laugh it off. Final stand. Against what? Themselves. Before anyone could respond, the fleet powered up again, brighter and louder this time. The flagship's engines roared to life, and the ancient weapons systems began to move. Cannons shifted, aiming at the Zyran Voyager with mechanical precision. "Captain," Vera shouted, her voice trembling. "The fleet is locking onto us." Orvac bolted upright, his confidence shaken. "What? That's impossible. It's just old junk." The ship's alarms blared as the Zyran Voyager's systems struggled to analyze the sudden threat. The alien crew, who had laughed only moments ago, now scrambled in panic. Even Tarek's smug expression had vanished, replaced by wide-eyed fear. Corin stared at the screen, his heart pounding. "I told you," he muttered under his breath. "This fleet isn't dead. It's waiting for something." As the weapons locked on, a low, metallic voice echoed through the Zyran Voyager speakers. It was ancient, crackling with static, but unmistakable in its authority. The voice said, "Unauthorized presence detected. You mock what you do not understand. Stand down, or be eliminated." The crew froze, their mocking laughter replaced by a deep, bone-chilling silence. Orvac swallowed hard, his hand shaking as he gripped the controls. For the first time in his long career, he had no idea what to do. "Corin," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "What have we just awakened?" Clues of human origin. The Zyran Voyager trembled as the ancient fleet's weapons locked onto it. The once mocking crew now sat in stunned silence, their confidence shattered. Every console on the Zyran ship flashed red warnings. The ancient voice continued to echo through the speakers, calm but commanding. "You are trespassing on sovereign territory. Identify yourself or face consequences." Captain Orvac clenched his fists. He had faced hostile fleets, rogue planets, and cosmic anomalies, but this was different. These weren't just relics. They were something far more advanced and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "Send a transmission," Orvac barked, his voice shaky but firm. "Tell them we mean no harm." Vera quickly keyed in the captain's message, her hands trembling. "This is the Zyran Voyager," the message began. "We are explorers. We found your fleet by accident. We respect your territory and request safe passage." For a moment, nothing happened. The fleet remained still, its glowing weapons aimed directly at the Zyran ship. The tension in the control room was unbearable. Then, the metallic voice spoke again. "Explorers. Intriguing. Accessing archives." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Corin's sharp eyes focused on the readings from the fleet. The energy levels were rising again, but this time, it wasn't directed at them. Instead, the fleet seemed to be unlocking something. Suddenly, the main screen of the Zyran Voyager flickered. A new image appeared, a human face. It was pale and weary, the lines on its skin telling a story of struggle and survival. The crew gasped. None of them had ever seen a human before, not even in their vast galactic archives. The face began to speak. Its voice was solemn, carrying an eerie mix of despair and determination. "To those who find this fleet, know this: we are humanity. These ships were our last hope. We built them not for conquest, but for survival." The crew leaned closer to the screen, captivated by the human's words. Even Tarek, who had mocked the fleet earlier, was silent now. The message continued, the human's voice growing heavier with emotion. "We were not the most powerful species. We were not the wisest. But we were survivors. When the galaxy turned against us, when our enemies sought to erase us, we did what we had to. These ships are our legacy." Corin's eyes widened as the translation system decoded more of the human speech. "Captain, this fleet isn't just a relic. It's a monument to their resilience. They were fighting extinction." Orvak's jaw tightened. "Extinction from what?" he asked. Before Corin could answer, the human hologram continued, as if responding to the question. "If you are watching this, then perhaps humanity has fallen. But our spirit remains. These ships are more than metal and code. They are a warning. Underestimate us at your peril." The image faded, replaced by a map of the galaxy. Dozens of red points flashed, marking the locations of long-forgotten battles. The crew stared in shock as the map zoomed in on one system after another, each accompanied by brief records of brutal wars. Corin stepped closer to the screen, his voice barely above a whisper. They weren't just fighting one enemy. They were fighting everyone. "Everyone?" Vera asked, her voice trembling. "Why would an entire galaxy turn against them?" Corin shook his head, his expression grim. "Because they were too strong to ignore. Look at this fleet. Even after thousands of years, it's still functional. Imagine what it was like when it was new." Tarak, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. His voice was quieter than usual, lacking its usual arrogance. "So, humans built all this. They weren't weak." Corin shot him a sharp glance. "Weak? They were one of the most determined species I've ever studied. Weak species don't build fleets that survive millennia." Before anyone could respond, the fleet began to shift again. The flagship's engines roared, and the ancient weapons powered down. The low, metallic voice returned. "You have been spared. Learn from this encounter. Humanity is gone, but its legacy remains. Do not repeat the mistakes of the past." The Zyran Voyager scanners picked up one final surge of energy from the fleet. A glowing blue signal shot out from the flagship, disappearing into the depths of space. The crew watched in awe as the fleet powered down once more, its weapons retracting and its lights dimming. Orvak exhaled, his shoulders slumping in relief. "We need to leave. Now." As the Zyran Voyager pulled away from the fleet, Corin stared out the window, his mind racing. The humans were gone, but their story wasn't over. Deep down, he couldn't shake a chilling thought. If humanity had fought so hard to survive, what had been powerful enough to nearly destroy them? And more importantly, was it still out there? The activation. The Zyran Voyager's engines roared as it pulled back from the mysterious fleet. Relief spread across the crew, but it was short-lived. The eerie silence from the fleet was unnerving, and Corin couldn't shake the feeling that something had been set into motion. "We're leaving," Captain Orvak said firmly. "I won't risk this ship any longer. Whatever this fleet was, it's none of our concern now." But Corin wasn't so sure. He kept his eyes glued to his scanner, watching the energy signatures of the fleet. They weren't fading. In fact, they were growing stronger. "Captain," he said, his voice tight, "we have a problem. The fleet's power levels are rising again. This time, it's different. It's not just activation, it's spreading." Orvak's expression darkened. "Explain, Corin." Corin pointed to the screen. "The flagship is sending out signals to the other ships. It's like they're waking up, together." The crew stared at the display in disbelief. One by one, the ancient ships began to light up, their engines humming with renewed life. Entire sections of the fleet shifted, aligning into a precise formation. It was as if the fleet was preparing for something, a purpose long forgotten but suddenly remembered. "This isn't random," Corin whispered. "This fleet has a mind of its own." Tarak leaned closer, his earlier bravado replaced by a growing sense of dread. "A mind? What do you mean?" "It's just old junk. There's no way it's alive." Corin's eyes narrowed. "Not alive in the way you think. But this fleet was built with purpose. The humans didn't just make ships. They made something that could think, adapt, and respond. This isn't just a fleet. It's a weapon with a memory. The crew's unease turned to panic as the fleet began moving. Massive ships shifted into new positions, forming a defensive barrier around the flagship. The glowing orb inside the flagship's central chamber pulsed brighter and faster, sending waves of energy rippling through the fleet. "It's blocking our path," Vera said, her voice trembling. "Captain, they're surrounding us." Orvac slammed his fists on the console. "Shields up. Ready the engines for full burn. We're breaking through." But before the Zyran Voyager could act, the fleet unleashed a powerful wave of energy. It wasn't an attack. It was a message. The Voyager's main screen flickered, and a new hologram appeared. This time, it wasn't a human face or a map. It was a battlefield. The crew watched in horror as scenes of destruction unfolded before them. Massive human fleets clashed with alien armadas, entire planets reduced to rubble. The hologram focused on a single ship, a colossal human dreadnought, larger than anything the Zyranians had ever seen. Its weapons unleashed devastating energy blasts, tearing through enemy ships with ease. The crew could feel the intensity of the battle, even though it was just an image. The metallic voice returned, calm and unyielding. "This is humanity's legacy. We fought for our survival. We fought for freedom. And when the galaxy turned against us, we left behind our final defense." The scene shifted again, this time to Earth. The once beautiful blue planet was now a wasteland, its surface scorched and lifeless. The voice continued. "They thought they could destroy us, but they underestimated our will. Our spirit endures, even in the void of space." Corin's heart sank as he realized the truth. "Captain, this isn't just a fleet. It's a warning. The humans left this here for a reason." Orvac frowned, his mind racing. "A warning for what?" Corin hesitated, then pointed at the glowing orb in the flagship. "That. It's more than a power source. It's a beacon." The captain's eyes widened. "A beacon? For what?" Before Corin could answer, the fleet's energy spiked again. This time, the ships aimed their weapons skyward, firing beams of light into the void. The beams converged, forming a massive signal that spread across the galaxy. The Zyran Voyager's sensors lit up with alerts. Vera gasped. "Captain, the signal. It's being sent to every corner of the galaxy." Tarak stared at the screen, his voice barely a whisper. "They're calling for something. Or someone." The metallic voice spoke one last time. "Humanity may be gone, but the fight is not over. We await the return of our creators. Until then, we defend their legacy." The crew sat in stunned silence, the weight of the revelation crushing their earlier arrogance. The fleet was more than a relic. It was a message, a guardian, and perhaps a harbinger of something yet to come. Orvac broke the silence. "Set a course for the nearest outpost. We need to report this, and hope we're not too late." As the Zyran Voyager fled, the ancient fleet returned to its silent vigil. The glowing beacon continued to pulse, sending its signal into the farthest reaches of space, waiting for a response that might never come, or one that would change the galaxy forever. The human legacy. The Zyran Voyager sped away from the ancient fleet, its engines straining as if even the ship itself wanted to escape the looming threat. Inside the control room, the crew sat in uneasy silence. No one dared speak, their minds racing to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Corin broke the silence, his voice low but urgent. "Captain, we can't just run from this. That fleet, it's more than a weapon. It's a story, and it's unfinished." Orvac turned to him, his expression unreadable. "What are you saying, Corin? You saw what we all saw. That fleet was built for war. It's dangerous, unpredictable." Corin stepped closer to the main console, pulling up the holographic map left by the humans. The red points of battlefields glowed like embers, each one a reminder of humanity's desperate struggle. "Look at this," he said, gesturing to the map. "They weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to survive. This wasn't conquest. It was resistance." Tarak, still pale from the encounter, scoffed weakly. Resistance or not, they lost. Humanity is gone, and they left their fleet behind like a tombstone. What does it matter now? Corin's eyes narrowed, because they didn't just leave it behind. They left a message. That fleet wasn't meant to be forgotten. It's waiting for something. Before Tarek could retort, Vera gasped. Corin's right. Look. She pointed to her monitor, where the energy beacon from the flagship continued to ripple through the galaxy. The signal. It's not random. It's encoded. It's broadcasting coordinates. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Orvac leaned over Vera's station, studying the readings. Coordinates. To where? Vera's fingers danced across the console, decoding the signal. Moments later, a set of galactic coordinates appeared on the screen. Corin's breath caught. That's Earth, he whispered. Tarek's eyes widened. You mean the humans' homeworld? That burned-out wasteland we saw in the hologram. Corin nodded. Exactly. The fleet isn't just a weapon or a warning. It's a guide. It wants us, or someone, to go there. Orvac folded his arms, his expression grim. And why would we do that? What could possibly be left on a dead planet? Corin met his gaze, his voice steady. Answers, Captain. Humanity left this fleet to protect their story. If we follow the signal, we might uncover the truth about what happened to them, and why the galaxy turned against them. Orvac hesitated. He was a cautious leader, but the curiosity burning in Corin's eyes was contagious. Finally, he sighed. Set a course for Earth, but I'll be clear. If this turns into another threat, we're leaving. Understood. The crew nodded, and the Voyager turned toward the ancient coordinates. As the ship entered hyperspace, the crew reviewed the data they had gathered. Corin pored over the recordings from the fleet, his mind racing with possibilities. Humanity was extraordinary, he murmured, mostly to himself. They didn't just fight. They adapted. They turned their desperation into innovation. That fleet isn't just a relic of war. It's a testament to their ingenuity. Tarek, still skeptical, leaned back in his chair. If they were so extraordinary, how did they lose? Corin's expression darkened. That's the question, isn't it? They built a fleet that could outlast civilizations. What could have been powerful enough to erase them completely? The ship exited hyperspace, and the crew stared in awe as Earth came into view. The planet was just as the hologram had shown, a wasteland of ash and ruin. Its once blue oceans were now gray and lifeless, its continents scorched and barren. But something else caught their attention. Orbiting the planet was a massive structure, larger than anything they had ever seen. It was a station, its sleek design bearing the same markings as the ancient fleet. The beacon from the flagship had stopped transmitting, its signal now replaced by one from the station. That's it, Corin said, his voice filled with awe. The source of the beacon. Orvac frowned. We approach with caution. Vara, scan the station for defenses. Tarek, prepare the shields. The Voyager moved closer to the station, its scanners revealing more details. The structure was ancient but intact, its surface dotted with what appeared to be docking bays and observation decks. As they approached, the station came alive, its lights flickering on in sequence like a machine waking from slumber. A new message appeared on their screen, written in the same ancient human language. The translation system worked quickly, displaying the words in Zeranian. Welcome to the cradle of humanity. Enter to learn. Enter to understand. The crew stared at the message, a mix of fear and curiosity gripping them. Orvac took a deep breath. Prepare to dock. Whatever humanity left behind, we're about to find it. As the Zeran Voyager approached the station, Corin couldn't help but feel a strange sense of reverence. The humans were gone, but their legacy was alive, and it was calling to them. The power of the fleet. The Zeran Voyager docked with the massive orbital station. The crew moved cautiously, every step filled with hesitation. The airlock hissed open, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor that stretched into the heart of the structure. The walls were etched with strange, glowing patterns, symbols that pulsed faintly, as though responding to their presence. Captain Orvac led the team, his hand resting on his holstered plasma weapon. "Stay alert," he ordered. "We don't know what we're walking into." Corin followed closely, his scientific mind racing. This station, it's more than just a relic. It's alive, in its own way. Tarek, bringing up the rear, muttered under his breath, "Alive or not, I don't like being in a dead species museum." As they ventured deeper, the corridor widened into a vast chamber. In the center stood a towering console surrounded by holographic projections. The projections displayed images of Earth, once vibrant, now lifeless. They also showed the ancient fleet, its ships glowing with power. At the heart of the display was a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with dozens of red markers indicating battle sites. "This is incredible," Corin whispered, stepping forward. "It's a command hub. This station wasn't just part of the fleet. It controlled it." Orvac frowned. "Controlled it? You mean someone here could operate that entire fleet?" Corin nodded, studying the projections. "Not just someone. Humanity. They built this station to coordinate their final stand. Every battle, every maneuver, it all started here." The station's lights flickered, and a new hologram appeared. It was a human figure, tall and commanding, dressed in a uniform marked with symbols of rank. The figure spoke in a calm, authoritative voice. "To those who find this station, welcome. You stand in the cradle of humanity's last hope. This is the vanguard, the core of our resistance. If you are allies, you are welcome. If you are enemies, prepare to face the consequences." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The hologram continued, its tone heavy with emotion. "Our enemies sought to destroy us, not for what we had done, but for what we could become. They feared our ability to adapt, to innovate, to resist. In the end, they united against us. They burned our worlds, scattered our people, and thought they had erased us." Corin's voice trembled with awe. "But they didn't. They left this behind. This station, this fleet. It's all a testament to humanity's resilience." The hologram gestured to the galaxy map, and the projections shifted, showing the battles in greater detail. The Xeranians watched in silence as entire fleets clashed, human ships outnumbered but never backing down. "In our final days," the hologram said, "we made a choice. We could die in despair, or we could leave behind a legacy. We chose the latter. This fleet, this station, they are our message to the stars. We may be gone, but our spirit endures." The hologram flickered, and a new projection appeared, a timeline of events leading up to humanity's fall. The crew saw how the galaxy had turned on them, uniting to crush a species that had dared to rise too quickly. They saw Earth's desperate defense, the creation of the fleet, and the launch of the Vanguard station. "They weren't just fighting for survival," Corin said, his voice breaking. "They were fighting for the right to exist." Orvac's face hardened, and they lost. The galaxy wiped them out, and now were standing in the ruins of their defiance. Before anyone could respond, the station came to life. The glowing patterns on the walls pulsed brighter, and the galaxy map zoomed in on a single red marker, a battlefield near the fleet's current position. Alarms blared, and the station's systems began to hum with energy. "What's happening?" Tarek shouted, his voice filled with panic. Corin's eyes widened. "The fleet, it's activating." The crew rushed back to the control room of the Zyran Voyager as the ancient fleet outside began to move. The once stationary ships were now in motion, forming intricate patterns as they aligned with the station's signals. Weapon systems powered up, their glowing barrels aimed at the darkness of space. The hologram's voice returned, echoing through the Voyager's speakers. "The fleet has detected a threat. Protocols engage. Defensive measures active." Vera gasped as her console lit up with new readings. "Captain, multiple ships are approaching. They're not human. They're alien." Orvak's jaw tightened. Enemies of humanity. After all this time. The crew watched in stunned silence as a massive alien armada emerged from hyperspace. The ships bore no recognizable insignia, but their design was aggressive, their weapons bristling with power. "They must have intercepted the beacon," Corin said. "The fleet's activation wasn't just a call to us, it was a challenge." The alien ships opened fire, their energy blasts streaking toward the ancient fleet. But the fleet was ready. With precision and coordination that defied its age, the human ships returned fire, their weapons tearing through the alien vessels with devastating efficiency. The Xiran Voyager trembled as the battle unfolded. Corin stared in awe. It's not just a fleet, it's a masterpiece. Humanity didn't just build ships, they built warriors. Orvak clenched his fists, and they're still fighting. Even after death, they're protecting their legacy. The crew could only watch as the ancient fleet dismantled the alien armada. The battle was swift, brutal, and final. When it was over, the human ships returned to their silent formation, their weapons powering down. The hologram spoke one last time. "This is humanity's gift and its warning. To those who seek to destroy, know this: we will not be forgotten. To those who seek to learn, step forward. Our legacy is yours to understand." The Xiran crew sat in silence, the weight of the encounter pressing down on them. Humanity was gone, but their spirit remained, unyielding, indomitable, and eternal. The final revelation. The Xiran Voyager drifted in silence, its crew still shaken from the battle they had just witnessed. The ancient fleet hovered nearby, its formation flawless, its weapons now quiet but poised. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on everyone aboard. Captain Orvak broke the silence, his voice quiet but firm. "What we've seen here, it changes everything. We came here thinking we were explorers, but we've stumbled into something far greater. Humanity's story isn't over." Corin stood by the console, his eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. "Captain, the humans didn't just leave behind a fleet. They left behind a legacy, one that they knew would outlast them." The hologram of the human commander reappeared, its image clear despite the millennia that had passed. This time, the figure's tone was softer, almost hopeful. "If you stand here today, it means the galaxy has changed. Our time is over, but our spirit endures. We left this fleet not just as a warning, but as a challenge." Humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons or its ships. It was its ability to adapt, to endure, and to unite in the face of impossible odds. The hologram gestured to the galaxy map, zooming in on the coordinates of Earth. The station's systems began to hum once more, and a hidden panel on the console slid open. Inside was a small glowing device, a memory core, pulsating faintly. "This," the hologram said, "is the sum of all we were. Our history, our knowledge, our dreams. It is our gift to the future." Corin stepped forward, his hands trembling as he reached for the memory core. The glow intensified as he touched it, and a flood of images and sounds filled his mind. Snapshots of human life, their triumphs and tragedies, their laughter and tears. It was overwhelming, yet profoundly beautiful. He gasped, "Captain, this isn't just a record. It's alive. It's like humanity itself is speaking through it." Tarak, for once, was silent, his usual sarcasm replaced by quiet awe. They left all this behind. For what? Why go through so much trouble if they knew they were doomed? The hologram seemed to answer his question, its voice filled with a quiet resolve. "Because hope is never wasted. We knew we might not survive, but we believed in the possibility of something greater. We believed that even if we were gone, someone would find what we left behind, and in doing so, they would understand us, and perhaps carry our legacy forward." Vera wiped a tear from one of her 3 eyes, the weight of the words cutting through her usual composure. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for the future. As the hologram faded, the station's systems began to power down. The glowing patterns on the walls dimmed, and the command console fell silent. The fleet outside returned to its dormant state, its engines quiet, its weapons retracted. Orvac stood, his gaze fixed on the now dormant console. We came here thinking we were superior, mocking what we didn't understand. But we've learned something today. Humanity wasn't weak. They were extraordinary. The crew returned to the Zyran Voyager, the memory cores secured in their cargo hold. As the ship pulled away from the station, Corin spoke, his voice filled with determination. We can't keep this to ourselves, Captain. The galaxy needs to know the truth about humanity. Not the myths, not the propaganda, the truth. They weren't just a species. They were a force. Orvac nodded. We'll tell their story, but we'll also carry their warning. If the galaxy turned on them once, it could happen again. This fleet, this station, it's not just a relic. It's a reminder of what's possible when unity meets desperation. As the Zyran Voyager entered hyperspace, the crew looked back one last time at the ancient fleet and the Vanguard station, still orbiting the lifeless Earth. The beacon's light pulsed faintly, as if bidding them farewell. Corin stared at the fading glow, his thoughts heavy but hopeful. Maybe humanity is truly gone, but their spirit, it's still out there. And who knows, maybe one day they'll return. Far behind them, in the silence of space, the fleet continued its eternal vigil. And deep within the Vanguard station, the last remnants of humanity's story waited patiently, its message echoing across time. We fought, we endured, and though we may be gone, our legacy will never fade.